Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
Today we have Reginald Vernon Oates, who's born in 1950. Now he's an American killer, or a spree killer is what they call him, who kill 4 young boys within the span of 2 days in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, just spoiler alert, or trigger warning, however you want to pick to say it, all the boys are under 10.
Ooh.
And this is in April 1968.
Right on the cusp of the 70s.
Yep. So just so we know, it's going to be some dark shit that we uncover here.
Usually is when it involves kids or anybody else. Pretty much it's dark shit when we talk about it.
Yeah. So Reginald was born in 1950 in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, he was adopted at an early age by the Oates, and he lived in a very segregated urban area. So naturally, since it's segregated, he'll spend much of his childhood in a disadvantaged atmosphere. And then, for whatever reason, I feel like he was socially awkward because his peers would constantly bully him. So he didn't really have friends. So he was outcast.
Do you know how old he was when he was adopted? It's not important. I'm just curious.
No. They just say an early age, so they're all he knows. There's not a whole lot on him. Just gonna forewarn you. So by all means, pepper me with whatever weird, annoying questions you want to. I might not know the answers to them. It was quite frustrating. So in 1965, he's in the 9th grade, and one of Reginald's classmates accused him of attempting to rob another student at gunpoint over a few cents. Now, this rumor spreads all over the student population, and Reginald will deny that that ever happened. I think this would be real easy to determine if did he have a gun,
or at least access to a gun.
Yeah, regardless, he's found guilty, convicted, and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, which naturally, he's a juvenile, so he serves this time at a juvenile detention facility.
Yeah.
Which I realized back in the day, it was one of those, you didn't really need so much evidence, but I don't understand how, if it was a rumor, how the hell did he get 2 years? I get he was the odd duck out kind of situation, but he claims he didn't do it, which I don't know if he did or not. I'd be willing to say he wasn't, because as we get further into Reginald, and I don't know what his IQ was, but he's not real bright, and when he's confronted with things, he admits to it. So I wouldn't see why if he did it,
Yeah, like if he's going to own up to some of it or everything else, why deny this one? Yeah, I get it.
Now, during his imprisonment at that juvenile detention center, Reginald is physically and sexually abused by other prisoners, which naturally will greatly scar him and traumatize him. And for somebody who's already known such a hard life of just, he's all by himself, he's picked on, he's living a rough life in Maryland, so it's just add to abuse. Now, I don't have anything from his childhood that's saying his adoptive parents mistreated him in any way. So other than these 2 years of really harsh treatment during like his adolescence. So, and especially if he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Poor kid.
Yeah, it's awful.
But so he's released at 17 years old and returned to his adoptive parents.
Did they take him back?
They did. But he drops out of school and then finds work as a waste collector. And
like a trash man?
They call it a waste collector. So, yes, a trash man, but I guess.
Well, I'm not sure if that's like garbage or septic or.
Poo. I would assume it's garbage.
Okay.
But not a long time after he gets out of that, youth offender thing.
Mhm.
He converts to Christianity, and he'll claim he spent all of his free time reading the Bible. I don't think any of it stuck, because we wouldn't be discussing him today if he didn't go on to do some absolutely vile things. But just
Yeah.
know that's what he'll claim his extracurricular activities would be, is he's studying the Bible.
Right. Okay.
Which brings us to a period of time in April 1968. Now, I will say that in this area, earlier in 1968, there's a lot of children that are disappearing in that neighborhood of the Baltimore area, and they're all young boys between 5 and 10. Now, I didn't find anything that connects Reginald Oates to that. It just happened that whatever was going on in Baltimore between 67 and 68, there were young boys disappearing in that neighborhood. They never find them. Since Reginald was incarcerated during that time, I mean, obviously he didn't do all of them, but I don't know. He didn't say that he did anything beyond the 4 boys that he is convicted, or not convicted, but he's found to have done or murdered them. But despite the police best effort during those missing boys, they were never found. So,
like their bodies, nothing?
Nothing. The only clues that they would have with some of them were that either they were seen with a young black man, or that some children outside this little park area had been solicited for sex, which I think is like, what? How do you solicit a 5 to 10-year-old boy for sex? How do they even know what it is?
I'm not sure. That's out of my area of expertise. So,
Same.
not sure on that one.
But bear that in mind. So that brings us to April 17th, 1968. Reginald lures 10-year-old Lewis Hill to Gwynn Falls, or like outside of Gwynn Falls, Leakin Park, where he beats and rapes little Lewis. Now, after slicing Lewis's throat, he violates his little corpse and then slices off his head and hands.
Aww.
Now, I don't know if when he rapes Lewis, it would appear that he killed Lewis first and then raped him, so at least
there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know the purpose of chopping off his head and hands, but he does.
Maybe so he's not identified? Or does he like chop him off and leave him there?
It's left there. Like, I don't know.
There goes that theory.
There's things not connected right in Reginald's brain. The next day, Reginald lures 3 boys into the park: 8-year-old Larry Jefferson, his 5-year-old brother Mac, and 10-year-old Lester Watson. Now, he beats and stabs all 3 of them numerous times, and just like with a 5-year-old, like 5, 8, and 10. I can't even imagine how scared they were that they didn't run off, that they were just frozen in fear.
I don't understand how he was able to do that.
I have no idea.
I realize it was with a knife, to save all your smart ass comments.
Well, no, other than I can only imagine very quickly.
Yeah. No, I'm assuming he probably killed the older ones first, because...
Well, that's where I figured also the oldest, and then the 5-year-old was probably just terrified.
Yeah.
Or even if he did run, he couldn't run fast enough, which is even sadder.
You like these cases. You like to do this to my brain.
No, I'm going to tell you why I did. We'll get to why I picked this case. But just like with Lewis, Reginald has sex with the children's bodies. He then guts them, cuts off their genitals, and takes them with him.
Oh my God, what?
Yes.
Like, what? Why?
Yes.
Just, I'm without words at the moment.
Right. And also, other sources will say he drank their blood. Not all of them said that, so I don't know if he did or not, but I feel like if he's going to chop off genitals and take them with him, drinking blood seems to be on the less shocking of lists.
So, to go along with your questions from the Count Dracula episode, what did he take them with him in? Did he like bring a bag?
He
In
sure
his
did.
pocket?
His lunchbox, actually.
Ew. Ew.
That brings us to the next day, because again, part of this is crazy because so much happens in a very short amount of time. But the next day, Reginald tries to lure two little girls, 11 and 12, into the park. They go into the park and he attacks them with the intent of raping them, but is unsuccessful and they get away, which makes me think that he can only have little boys as his victim because the older kids can outsmart him or outmuscle him or are wiser to what he's got planned.
Well, and
But
I would
they
imagine that some people have reported these kids as missing, so hopefully parents are telling their kids to be careful.
Right. So before he lured, so now, I mean, there's 4 dead boys at this point. That prior to that, there were people reporting somebody trying to lure little boys into the park. So the police are like, they're heavily patrolling this area because of the children that have gone missing within that area, and then also the reports of some younger black man soliciting and trying to lure children. So they're patrolling, and that same day that those girls run off, they look up and see Reginald. And now at a distance, they're like, this guy matches, he's alone in the park. It just looks, might want to talk to this fella. Now, Reginald must know that they're sizing him up, or this isn't good kind of scenario. So once Reginald realizes they're police officers, he flees. Now, again, the reason they're patrolling that park is because all the kids being reported missing around there. But so Reginald breaks into the sprint. The officers naturally give chase, catch up with him, run him to the ground. And that's when they're just like, we should check out what this guy's got in his little sacks and everything. So they crack open his lunchbox, and it contains a hacksaw blade, a large kitchen knife, an 8-inch long piece of metal that then, like towards the end, if you flipped it over, it kind of made a claw. Not 100% sure what he was doing with that. But he also had a brown paper bag in there, which they opened up, and it contained the genitals of the 3 boys.
Ugh. I can only imagine what those officers thought at that moment. Like, and if it was a brown paper bag, it was obviously bloody, right?
I would think so, unless it's like they were drained or like dried. Like this is the next day, so maybe they were shriveled. Regardless, I mean, they crack that thing open and there's 3 sets of genitals in that bag. So I can only imagine opening it up and being like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And it's got to have an awful smell to it because this is 24 hours later.
Yeah.
But he's immediately arrested. Now, later that same day, Reginald leads officers back to the park and where the bodies are. So that's when the bodies are discovered. Now, all the boys went missing between April 10th and the 18th, and they don't imagine they would have been found because the part of the park that the bodies were in, it was kind of like more of the rundown trails kind of scenario and a lot of underbrush, and that's where he had thrown them into, and he hadn't attempted to cover the bodies at all. He just chunked them in there. So if it's part of a park where it's less traveled, I mean, the chance of them being located probably wouldn't have happened. But that's also when they discover like the sexual torture that each boy had endured.
Wait, I thought he killed them first.
I like to think that he killed them first, but they believe that each boy was sodomized and sexually tortured before their lives were taken. Now, he killed each one of them by hacking through their throat with that hacksaw.
Or babies.
Yeah. Now, after Reginald's arrest, naturally the village, not the village, but the area is aware of his arrest, and obviously the missing children being found. It's got to be horrific. But other boys start coming forward and pick Reginald out. as the person who tried to lure them into the park. 4 of the boys that pick him out of that lineup are under 8.
Oh, gosh.
Now, that's when, from those boys, they learn that Reginald would lure the children into the park by inviting them to play a game of cowboys and Indians.
Aw. That's
Oh,
why I
I
didn't catch the
know.
girls. The girls were like, I don't want to play Cowboys and Indians.
Well, I feel like when it was the older kids, they probably were a little bit more suspicious of things, and the younger ones just weren't. And little kids shouldn't be aware of the evil that's out there in the world. But I feel like the younger ones, it's not a blip on their radar that they're going to be dragged into the woods and raped.
Yeah.
But that brings me to the park in which this happens. Is, like I was telling you before, is Gwen Falls or Leakin Park. It's the largest woodland park on the East Coast that's within a city. It's 1,200 acres of greenery, and a lot of families will go there to visit the park because there's like a miniature steam powered railroad.
Oh,
There's
that's cool.
also, yeah, there's also like extensive hiking trails. People do picnics there.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like a gorgeous park.
yeah, so I can see where it attracts people because there's things to do, but that's 1,200 acres is humongous.
Mm-hmm.
But part of my reason for picking this case is one, it's absolutely horrifying, and just to know this guy's still alive. This
She's still in
park,
prison.
we'll get there. We're talking about the park and why. No, I do not like to do cases with little kids being murdered and sexually assaulted. But
I argue that point, but whatever. Let's
this
glaze over
park,
it and keep going.
this park has had more than 75 bodies found in it. Not from the same person, not like just one serial killer just dumping bodies, but over the span of from 46 to 2017. 75 bodies of, I mean, this is women, children, men, scattered throughout this park.
Wow.
It is one of the United States' massive body dumping grounds. It's like, uh,
For our serial killers out there, you just found your dumping spot.
yeah, well, it's the largest unregistered graveyard, is what it is. But it's just
That's
like, I don't understand. That's so many bodies.
a lot of
75,
bodies.
75 bodies. The running joke with this little park cemetery thing, like killing field. Now, mind you, people aren't murdered here usually, other than Reginald Oates, but usually they're dumped there. But I don't want to say, I guess it's not really a joke, but people will say that, like, when there's a missing person in that area, that when the police go out, they have to be specific on who they're looking for and not to just bring in everybody you find. And it's just like, just
Wait,
the fact that that's a thing, or there's also jokes of people going to bury a body there are pretty likely to dig up somebody else's in their quest to hide their own corpse. And
that's
it's like,
super messed up
I don't understand what is going on in Baltimore that this, like, what the hell? 75 people have died here.
that they found.
Oh, yeah, they've found. Now, I've got a map of this, of where all the bodies have been found, and I realize maybe I'm just more of a visual person, but until you look at this map and truly realize that 75 dots on such a small area is mind-boggling. I don't understand why if this place isn't covered in trail cameras, if they
So is it,
know that so many people are doing this.
yeah. So is it a state park? Is like who maintains this park? Like who owns the land?
But I don't know. You can research that one. I was just
Well, because
horrified by how are we just now hearing about this?
well, you know how
Or
like most state parks are regulated and fenced, their entrances and exits can be
I don't,
locked.
yeah, but I don't feel like if they posted a sign, no body dumping, they'd follow them rules.
What I meant is they don't lock a gate to prevent people from going on the property to dump said bodies, because I don't foresee them doing this during the daytime hours. And I know the local parks
Well,
around here, they close at dusk.
you've been to parks that are still open at night. How many people are there?
I have not been to parks that are open at night. They all
Fine.
close.
Not all.
Unless it's like a camping ground.
Well, it's just one of those. I get that they can't have somebody actively out there, but even if they had a trail cam of people coming and going, I don't know. I'm horrified by how many bodies have turned up in this place and
Yeah,
what's
that's a
done
lot.
about that. Like, you would think
And
they would just turn it into a memorial park at this rate.
well, that's just what they've found.
Right. Right.
There's probably a lot more.
And let's face it, that the majority of these are probably unsolved. I haven't gone into the history of this park. I feel like that could be an entire podcast of its own. But I just think people need to be aware of this fucking park in Maryland. Just so
Which
this
I
is
know
just one case of many
of
for
75.
yeah, of Leakin Park.
Which I totally like the band, by the way.
So
I know.
weird. Everybody pronounces it like Linkin Park, but it's spelled like leaking without the G. So Gwen Falls or Leaking Park, but I think when people say it, it just sounds like Linkin Park.
Well,
Spelled different though.
I do like the band.
Way to make it about you. We'll get
It's not
back to
about me. It's
Reginald.
about the band.
No, it's not. It's about Reginald Oates and his disgustingness.
The band. I like the band. It's about the band. You made it about little boys. Continue.
Dick. So following Reginald's arrests, he's charged with the 4 murders. He's also charged with rape, attempted a rape of the 2 girls, one randomly of armed robbery that I'm not 100% sure where that one came from, but 16 counts is what he's charged with of like assault with all the murdering things. He's got 16 charges he's arraigned on, okay?
Where'd the robbery come from? Did he steal somebody's lunch money?
I don't know. Maybe he stole the hacksaw because he didn't need that with his trash collecting.
Maybe he took it out of somebody's trash.
That's not robbery. But anyway, he is also charged with molesting or the attempted murder and molestation of those 4 boys that came forward and pegged him as the guy who was trying to lure him into the park. But so Reginald pleads not guilty, declaring he's insane.
I thought you said he owns up to his shenanigans.
Well, he sort of did because he led the police to the bodies.
So
it's not like he tried to be like, I don't know how those genitals got into the bag.
Okay.
Well, it's still going to read as he pleads not guilty, but because, I mean, he's going to have a public defender that's clearly going to be like, so we're going to go with you're not guilty by reason of insanity because who collects little boys' genitals and totes them around a park? That it seems like a thing to do. Now, naturally, the community is horrified by the things Reginald has done, and it's Charles Mullane is the Baltimore state attorney at the time, and he takes charge of this case and seeks the death penalty, but he's also aware of if he's going to claim the insanity defense that he's got to be examined by a doctor. So he tells the community that, I am going to seek the death penalty, but first, we got to do things
legitimately. Yeah.
So Reginald is examined by 8 independent psychiatrists who, in November of that year, all 8 of them, without a doubt, say, Reginald, he's out of his gourd. He is the definition of being legally insane and is not fit to stand trial.
Oh, shit.
Now, as a result, he is sent for treatment at the Clifton Perkins State Hospital in Jessup, Maryland. Now, Reginald is committed to that hospital in 1968, and that is exactly where he has been since. He continues to petition the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene for his release. And every few years, he's up for release.
How old is he? Is he in his 80s?
Yeah. So his latest petition was in 2009, July, when he petitioned for his release. And then I've found it very difficult because he's not an inmate. So usually you can do like an inmate search and find out where somebody is,
Hmm.
but he's not technically an inmate. I don't know from 2009. It doesn't appear that he's died, been released, or obviously he hasn't had a trial, but I don't understand how he could petition for a release because if he wasn't fit to stand trial, doesn't that mean if the day comes that you're declared sane, well, great, now you get to answer for the crimes you committed?
I don't know if it works like that.
I don't think it does, but I would think that it should.
It should, but I think if they're going to say that he's not fit to stand trial, then wouldn't he get off and be found not guilty because he was technically insane at the time of his crimes?
But on a technicality, he couldn't defend himself, so he hasn't even gone to court to be not guilty. But I would think that wouldn't it go through some sort of judicial process after if a psychiatrist goes, okay, we figured out. I also didn't find where anybody has said what's wrong with him. Again, he hasn't gone to court, so all that would be medical records, which I don't know. Other than he has not answered for the crimes he committed because he was deemed insane, and he's currently being treated at a mental hospital.
I wonder what happened to his adopted parents.
I would imagine if I were them, I would definitely move out of the neighborhood because I can't imagine they were invited to any barbecues.
Any dinner parties?
Well, and you know what though? Again, there wasn't a whole lot on his upbringing, so I'm not gonna say they were great parents, but I don't know that they weren't either. It seems more like a wrongful conviction early on, and then some shady shit was going on in that juvenile detention center.
Yeah, and it just kind of set him on a path.
Yeah, that was a lot of trauma during a lot of developmental years, and even prior to that, when he was socially or developing those social skills, his peers were not welcoming. So it's just like he might have had mental issues to start with. I'm not disputing that one. And maybe that's why he didn't fit in anywhere, but it's just like he didn't have a place to fit in.
Yeah.
And then you pair that with trauma, and it's like a recipe for disaster. But I don't know how you make that leap from I get the trauma of being molested and physically abused, but I don't understand the
The
leap
leap to
to
genitals in a bag?
yeah, it seems like there's a large ravine of I don't understand how we went from there to here.
So I feel like at the same time that
He's angry at penises.
if you did understand that leap, then I'd have to question your sanity.
I'd be in the cell next to him.
Yeah, probably. Yep. Sure would be. And I don't think it's necessarily that he was angry with penises because he tried to
Yeah, the
attack
little
those two
girls.
girls. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
huh.
But again, so I picked this one. Just the horror of it all is I've never heard
So
of Reginald Oates, and I think all the things that he did in a very short amount of time, it's great that he was caught quickly because he clearly had a lot of free time, and that was just going to be devastating more so than it was
yeah.
to have somebody
And
like that on the loose
and what I'm also hearing is that you will not be living
in
in that
Baltimore.
area of Baltimore, Maryland.
I mean this as nicely and as least offensive as I can, but fuck Baltimore. No, thank you. I won't be setting a toenail in that city. Great to all of you who like Baltimore, but how the fuck do you have a park where 75 people have turned up and everybody's just hunky dory? Oh, that's what it is. It's just an unregistered graveyard. I mean, no.
Well, for me, as a mom and a wife, I would not be able to bring my kids and be like, hey, let's go picnic at this park. We might find us a body.
Well, I think it's cool that it's got the steam railroad and all, but just knowing the devastation that that park has in its history and not a recreational place. It should be registered as a cemetery of poor, unknown victims at this point, because I'm sure if 75 is how many they've found, who knows how many they haven't.
Yeah. That's awful.
But
Like
that's why I picked the case, because I'd like to raise awareness to the fact that this park exists. And really, Baltimore, figure that shit out. Because I swear, one more body shows up there, I don't know what'll happen, but
I was going to say, finish that sentence. I'm really curious. What are you going to do? Are you going to fold your arms and be like, yep,
well,
definitely not going there? Because I feel
already
like you
said
already
that.
put that stamp on there. So
I
one more
sure
body,
did.
and then what? What
And
is going to
then
happen?
I feel like Baltimore needs to open their eyeballs and put some surveillance out there or something, but they shut the shit down. Like, how many bodies will it take for it to not be a dumping ground for people? And is there
100.
like an ad somewhere that like, hey, if you killed somebody, dump them here, because not only do they not look for them after you dump them here, but nobody finds them really anyhow.
Hey, you know what? After your West episode, you could apparently find anything in the personals.
Oh.
And like your husband's coworker suggested, Craigslist. Well, it didn't suggest, but you know,
I was gonna say,
when she was commenting on that episode,
you're gonna need to clear that up, because
I was
you
curious where you
went
post for
you
prostitution.
went. I do not. Where one
I said,
would post for
you're feeling guilty.
prostitution. I am not feeling guilty. I'm like, where you make your post. I do not. Let's be
No,
clear.
I don't know where a person would post for prostitution ads. Like, I just never dawned on me. And when your husband's coworker apparently said Craigslist, like, I never thought of that.
Well, I'm glad to know.
Not saying that she has.
This
But shout out to
conversation's
her.
gone to a weird. Now it's just like anybody who is looking, Craigslist is your spot, evidently.
Apparently so. And Claire has found you your dumping ground for any of the bodies.
No, I've raised awareness, so maybe we can put a stop to the body dumpings.
Yeah, there's always that.
But again, I feel like if more people maybe are upset at that this is allowed to be a dumping ground, maybe.
Hey, the next time you're up this way, we should go there. And
did you not just hear me earlier? I am not going to Baltimore, let alone the fucking park. Fuck Baltimore. They're right up there. They're neck and neck with Indiana for me right now. Something wrong with those people, and there's something wrong with Baltimore. But
how cool? Well, not cool, but how interesting to go on like a scavenger hunt of sorts.
Your mind is a fucked thing.
But no, seriously, do you know how many missing people there are? I feel like if there's so many people that go missing and there's so many people being dumped there, why not challenge the public to find these bodies? You could probably put an end to a lot of cases, but then again, I'm guessing they wouldn't be discovered in the most uncontaminated way, and therefore any evidence that would be whatever. You know what? Shush.
I was just gonna let you go with it, but just not to beat up on Baltimore too much. But they are number 4 in the most dangerous city in America. Number 4. Now I haven't done investigation. So Memphis or Detroit is number 1, Memphis is number 2, Birmingham is number 3. But I haven't investigated those 3 to know what kind of killing fields they have. But I'll be investigating, because if Baltimore is only number 4 and I've learned about this horror, I can tell you Birmingham, Memphis, and Detroit are probably going to go on my list of cities that fuck you 3 too. Not that they care where Claire wants to travel to, but I'm just putting it out there. No, you guys need to figure your shit out and go from there. But that's Reginald Oates and my tirade of Baltimore.
All right. We've established Claire will not be going to Baltimore, or apparently Birmingham,
Detroit, or Memphis. Although I feel like I've already been to Memphis. I've driven through it. So I just didn't realize it was number 2 on that list.
I find it surprising. I don't know why. I just do. Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to go neck and neck with the unemployment rates. I mean, crime and unemployment kind of they trend together.
I didn't know the unemployment rate was high in Memphis.
It sure is.
Huh.
Based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the median household income and poverty rates from the U.S. Census in 2017.
All right. Good to know. What is
I,
Baltimore? Because I thought Baltimore was an expensive area.
that doesn't mean that they're not. Well, yeah, well, that would. Andrew, I don't know. I don't fucking. I'm just telling you the facts. The crime is not good in those 4 cities. Steer clear of them unless your
Hey,
goal in life is to
hey,
get stabbed.
tone it down, Missy. Unwad your panties. You said in the beginning of this to go ahead and ask our
I didn't
stupid
think.
questions.
I thought maybe you dial it down because then just like go ahead. But I didn't. I meant maybe
You didn't put
you won't
stipulations on
live
it.
up
You
to
did
it.
not put stipulations on it. You told me to go for it. I went for it.
Well, I'm gonna say visit those 4 cities if your goal is to be stabbed and murdered, because the odds are in your favor that you will achieve that.
All right. I'm sorry that Clara's offended those 4 cities.
I'm not. Get your shit together. And I feel bad for the police department because I know you're doing the best that you can, but you've been handed a pile of shit and apparently a bag of genitals.
That's awful. Hey, just curious, where does Chicago fall on that list? Because I always thought Chicago was a bad one.
I'm looking it up. It's number 29.
Really?
Wait, hold on. Yeah, number 29.
Huh. I always thought Chicago was like way up there.
Nope.
I would have definitely assumed it
Evidently,
over.
it's Detroit.
What about New York?
So that's where they've also got. I'll look up that in a second. So where they have it linked between the unemployment rate and the poverty rate, that helps break down the. I mean, they've also got how many violent crimes and all that, but that's what's factored into what makes it the most dangerous. New York. Well, hold on. They've got Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York shows up on that list.
Again, it's because it breaks down by the unemployment rate, the poverty rate, and then the homicides.
Hmm.
But that one's 26.
Buffalo?
Actually, so weirdly, Buffalo is the only city in New York state to rank on this list.
I'm questioning your list now. I thought Buffalo was like farm country.
They have a city, Andrea.
Yeah, but I thought Buffalo, New York was like farm
So
country.
again, you've got to keep in mind it's the crime rate also. So maybe it's just there's so many people in New York that even though there's crime, it's so heavily populated that it drowns out that statistic. Where Buffalo, if you've got less people living there and a lot of murders, that percentage is going to go up, you know?
No, I don't know, because why wouldn't it get chalked
Okay.
up to being
So
in New York City? Why is it Buffalo?
again, because they do it based on the city. So the crimes reported based on the population size. So you can have a population of 1,000 and 100,000, and then have like 100 murders in each city. And obviously, the one with the lower population and the number of crimes, that percentage will be higher because the population is lower.
I call bullshit. Salty nuts,
It's not
bullshit.
bullshit. It's math.
No, I get the math, but Buffalo, I'm not stupid.
Well,
I'm
he said
saying
you were calling bullshit. I was explaining the math
because
rate.
Buffalo, no, that's no.
New York City. And this is in 2017. Now, mind you, 2022 and between there, I feel like New York City's gone sideways. So,
Well, I thought like, okay, so granted, apparently I can't believe everything you learn as a kid, but I thought like cities were just well known for having a higher crime rate because the people are more densely packed in, more hostile. Therefore, with more people, the likelihood of your crime in general is higher. I realize that brings the statistics down because there's more bodies in the city as opposed to crime, but I thought if I'm walking down the street living in the country, I'm less likely to be mugged versus walking down the street in
So
Chicago or
where
New York City.
that is true, there in the when you get into the country side of things, that it's more of a you've got property crimes rather than in the city it's more a person to person.
More violent.
But again, it's congested. But even if you break down the cities in New York, still, Buffalo's still number one.
Well, the reason I call bullshit is I feel like if I'm walking down the street in Buffalo, I'm less likely to be pickpocketed or assaulted versus if I'm walking down an alley in New York City.
Not according to these statistics. So I wouldn't
and I'm
just
calling
waltz
bullshit
around.
on your statistics.
I wouldn't just waltz around Buffalo assuming that you can just let your wallet be seen or walk towards a dark alley fear of being stabbed. And like I said, if your goal in life is to be murdered or raped, visit one of the cities that I mentioned. If it's not, perhaps avoid it. And also, to the residents of those, get your shit together.
Or update your statistics.
No.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.